Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Meeting House. I'm your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody. This is the place where we have conversation on religion and American life, and I'm glad you've joined us today. Today we have the news, as always. My partner in reporting today is Tom Crottenmaker, familiar to many of you who've been listening to the Meeting House for some time. He's in New Haven, Connecticut, where he works at Yale Divinity School. He has for many years been a columnist for the USA Today newspaper. That's how I first met him. But he's also the author of a wonderful book, Confessions of a Secular Jesus Follower. I read it and reviewed it and actually did a program with him. He's also a national leader in the Humanist Association. He'll be with me in just a minute to talk about the news. Later, I have a guest from Nashville, Tennessee, Nancy Posey, professor, journalist, and lover of all things John Prine. She covered last week's affair known as You Got Gold. Here's the program, celebrating the life and legacy of the late great songwriter. I was there also. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Mr. Prine, our connection to him, and his influence on a whole generation of songwriters. Along the way, we have some music, a few other surprises. Thanks for joining us today in the Meeting House. And welcome back to the Meeting House, Tom.
Hello, Dr. Moody. Congratulations on the relaunch.
Thank you very much. And congratulations, you have a new writing gig. You started out writing for USA Today. Who are you writing for now?
Well, to paraphrase LeBron James, I've taken my talents to Only Sky, which is a brand new online magazine that's sort of for and by the secular community.
Good. I'm very interested in it. We probably need to do a whole show just on that, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's do the news.
Let's do it.
From Princeton, a Baptist preacher and scholar has been named president of Historically Presbyterian Princeton Seminary. Dr. Jonathan Lee Walton, 49, is currently dean at the Baptist-affiliated Wake Forest Divinity School. He will begin his tenure at Princeton in January. Walton earned both master's and doctoral degrees from Princeton. In 2019, Princeton Seminary pledged to spend $27 million to address its ties to slavery. And since that time, the seminary has named its library for Theodore Sedgwick Wright, the seminary's first African-American graduate. Well, Tom, can we talk about Princeton instead of Yale for a minute?
Well, Dwight, I'm very impressed by what Princeton Theological Seminary has been doing to face the racism in its past head on, and the way it's making the school more inclusive today. And I have to say, it's much the same here at Yale Divinity School. I'm heartened by the way that we've diversified the faculty and the staff and the student population, and the way that we have confronted our historical entanglement with slavery and racism. I know other schools are making efforts that are similar to this.
You know, it's one of the burdens that older schools have. You know, schools like Yale and Princeton are very proud of their long history. Younger institutions, younger schools, younger churches like mine, we don't have that legacy to deal with, but it is one of the challenges that these older schools have, isn't it?
It is. We can't change what happened in the past, but we can do a lot now and in the future to become more just and inclusive. And I wanted to point something out about this, Dwight. Schools like Princeton and Yale and the others, we're not doing this to be faddish or quote unquote woke. I mean, it comes out of a deep well of theology and morality. That's where it's coming from. And it's the right thing to do, not only morally, but it makes for a better school and a better education for students.
Well, you remember, Tom, when I was launching and leading the Academy of Preachers, in which we had all of these talented, brilliant, young black preachers, male and female. And I got to know these young people as young scholars. And I know the seminaries all across the country, including the predominantly white seminaries, were trying to recruit them to come to the schools because they're such outstanding students. Let's go to Fort Worth, Texas. Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, once the largest in the world, has seen enrollment drop to its lowest level since the 1940s. Much of this slide is caused by the forced resignation of 4 recent presidents, including Adam Greenway earlier this fall. We reported on that right here in the meeting house. Southwestern now counts just 281 students, that's an FTE number, full-time equivalent, in their Master of Divinity courses, down from 1,486 just 30 years ago. But even that number, Tom, 281, is above the national average, 162, for the 280 seminaries accredited by the Association of Theological Schools. Tom, you know that. How many FTEs in the master's program do you have there at Yale?
Well, we have 2 master's degree programs, the MAR, Master of Arts in Religion, and the MDiv. Together, they're just under 300. It's roughly a 50-50 split.
And now, as you know, I grew up as a Southern Baptist, so I have followed these Baptist stories most carefully in the meeting house. The Southern Baptists are a very troubled denomination right now, as many of them are. But this is a great crisis for that long historic seminary. Started after the Civil War, so they don't have that to deal with, but they got a lot of problems.
As you know, Dwight, and as I suspect a lot of listeners might know, Greenway, the man who was just recently forced to resign, he succeeded Paige Patterson, or you might say the notorious Paige Patterson. You know, he was fired for his terrible and misogynistic handling of sexual assault cases. And I read today that he was part of the so-called conservative resurgence in Baptist circles. I did read that Greenway removed stained glass windows at the campus honoring Patterson and other leaders of this resurgence. And so it seems to me that Greenway was trying to implement some changes to make the school more inclusive, but he was done in by those enrollment declines. You know, it's a tough situation for Southwestern, and I have to say for the sector that they're part of.
It is a really tough situation that they are in, and much of it caused by factors out of Greenway's control. But he made a lot of enemies when he went down there. But we'll see what happens. We'll follow it here in the meeting house. Now from Philadelphia. Politics is in the air as the midterm elections approach, and on the minds of many is what is known as Christian nationalism. And that is an effort to reshape American public life in accordance with the religious vision of white evangelical Christians. I've reported on this many times, wrote on it last week in the meeting house. To push back against this ideology, people of faith in Pennsylvania, and I don't mean just Christians, they launched the Freedom Express bus tour. It began October 18th with a rally in Philadelphia, and it kicked off a 3-week journey with its message challenging white supremacy and urging pro-democracy voters to make their voices heard on Election Day. Quote, there's something powerful about Muslims, Jews, Christians, Unitarian Universalists, and humanists presenting a unified front against politicians and policies dangerous to racial, gender, and LGBTQ equality, end quote. So said the pastor and tour leader Dwayne Royster during the live stream press conference and rally in Philadelphia. Tom, I don't think that bus is coming up to where you are, but it's got a lot of territory to cover in Pennsylvania.
You know, Dwight, this story reminds me of something that Sojourners founder Jim Wallace is known for saying. What he said is that the solution to bad religion, which in this case, of course, is Christian nationalism, white Christian nationalism, the solution is not no religion, it is rather good religion. And good religion seems to be what this tour is all about and what it is advancing. And of course, I have to appreciate Reverend Royster for including humanists.
Yes, I agree.
In his statement about how great it is to see these diverse people presenting a united front. Humanists need to be in the mix, as do other secular people who share this commitment to freedom and democracy.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're in the meeting house today, Tom. You know that. From Rome. Now, I know Rome is not in the United States, and most of our news is the news of American religion. But we all know that what happens in Rome impacts what happens in the United States. And Pope Francis has announced that a second Synod Assembly of Bishops will meet not only in October of 23, but in October of 24. The first Synod will convene next year in Rome, October 4-29. That's been established for a long time. And now he's added a second one the following year. These two events culminate a 4-year listening process involving Roman Catholic parishes around the world. Already, 112 of the 114 national conferences of bishops in the world, including the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, have sent to the Vatican a synthesis of what they have heard from their clergy and laity about the Church and its place in the world. This process, initiated by Pope Francis, is an effort to involve Catholic Christians everywhere in the conversation about Christian faith and practice. Tom, it's a big vision that Pope has, isn't it?
Yes, and I do like what I'm hearing here. You know, a listening process. Listening not only to clergy, but to the laity. It strikes me as a significant and welcome change from the long history of top-down hierarchical leadership in Catholicism. And of course, this is a problem in many, many circles and organizations, you know, not just the Catholic Church. So if you want to hear me pontificate for a minute, my exhortation to leaders of organizations everywhere is to listen to the voices and perspectives and lived experiences of those on the ground.
Right. It's very important. As a seminarian, of course, I took several courses in speaking the gospel. I did not take one course in how to listen. And maybe seminaries like yours ought to integrate that more forcefully in their shaping of ministers. But you're right. And not only listening to people, but listening to people not only on the ground, but on the margins.
On the margins, yes.
This is a great theme of the Bible itself, and maybe this is what's happening in the Catholic Church. And finally, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Pentecostal World Fellowship has elected Dr. William M. Wilson, president of Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, to serve a second term as the organization's chair. The decision came this week during an in-person meeting in conjunction with the Pentecostal World Conference. Wilson was chosen for his first term in 2019 and will lead the fellowship for the next 3 years. Wilson was officially installed on Thursday, October 13th, during the 26th Pentecostal World Conference, which is being held at a full gospel church in Seoul, South Korea. The Pentecostal World Fellowship presently has 76 representative groups from 47 countries and republics. What do you know about Pentecostalism? Have you ever written about Pentecostalism?
No, but the story has made me curious, and I poked around a little bit. So did you say 47 countries?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
republics.
a reminder of something worth mentioning and remembering, and something that's just a little bit at odds with the fact that an American was elected to this leadership position in the Pentecostal World Fellowship. All right, so we hear a lot about the decline of Christianity in America and in Western Europe, right?
Right.
But what's lost in that narrative is the fact that in other parts of the world, certain other parts of the world, Christianity is growing, like on the African continent.
Yes.
And often it's the Pentecostal tradition that's especially robust and growing. And that's interesting. You know, what do you think it is about Pentecostalism that's proving to be so appealing around the world?
Well, from the very beginning of the Pentecostal movement in 1906 out in California, it has been a ground level movement. It's not a top-down movement. It's a bottom-up movement, and it has engaged often people on the margins, not people who, I don't think the United States has ever had a Pentecostal president.
Mhm.
And I don't know that there are any Pentecostals on the Supreme Court or any places of high power in the United States.
Hmm.
Pentecostals are on the margins. Now, I'm going to do a show a little later this fall about the new Apostolic Reformation, which is Pentecostal. It's very fascinating, Tom, and maybe you and I can talk about it. But you're right, the Pentecostal movement is a worldwide movement, the most dynamic and energized part of the Christian community in the world today.
Further conversation must be had about this.
Tom, thank you for joining us today and talking about the news. Let's do this again.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You're quite welcome. I'm going to take a break and come back in a few minutes with Nancy Posey. We're going to talk about John Prine. Last week, the family and friends of John Prine, who died in 2020, gathered to celebrate his life. I was there. Nancy was there. We're going to talk about it and talk about Mr. Prine. Over this last weekend, both CBS and NBC produced and aired substantial pieces about John Prine and the You Got Gold week in Nashville. I wish we could play them for you, but they're copyright. We'd get in trouble. I encourage you to watch them. We will, however, play this video piece from Monday night. It's a piece that I took with my own camera of the whole group, the whole 2,400 people singing at the end of the concert his famous song, Paradise.
Float down the green river, then the soar up to the Rochester Dam. And I'll be halfway to heaven with paradise waiting, just 5 miles away from wherever I'm.
You're not in the Ryman Auditorium, but you're in the Meeting House, and I'm your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody. My guest is Nancy Posey, her first time in the Meeting House.
Good to be here.
Welcome to the Meeting House, Nancy.
Thank you.
That video summary stirred up a lot of emotion in me. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. I thought the whole week, and especially that night, since it was Prine's, what would have been his 76th birthday, felt a whole lot more like a celebration than a funeral. I think
It did, didn't it?
And
you were
yeah,
there all week.
Yeah.
You were there in Nashville. Of course, you live in Nashville.
I do.
And you were. What events did you attend?
I attended the Saturday night at the Country Music Hall of Fame Theater, and then the Monday night at the Ryman, the birthday of John Prine. Then I was there at City Winery, hosted what was more like a songwriters circle, where a lot of the songwriters who either worked with Prine or were influenced by him sang in several sets. And finally, the Basement East had kind of the younger crowd, some of the newer up-and-coming musicians that Prine had mentored, and some of them he even recorded with at his Oh Boy Records.
I was there for the Sunday night concert in the Ryman, and I have a funny story about that. You know, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be a more formal affair than what it actually was. I got dolled up, even put on a tie to wear to this event. And of course, as soon as we got there and stood in line outside, I could tell that everybody else had on a t-shirt. I quickly took my tie off. We attended that event. We attended Monday night with you. I didn't see you. We were in the balcony. Where were you sitting?
I was in the balcony.
You were up in the balcony. I was way over on the right edge.
I was on the left edge.
You were on the left edge. I was actually on the edge, the last seat on the right side, but they were great seats. We had sat under the balcony the first time. And then on Monday morning, I went downtown to the where they unveiled the star on the Nashville Walk of Stars, and that was a very moving experience as well. You were there. While I was in Nashville, I bought a.
That one of the things that was interesting to me was that people sometimes almost seem to forget why they were there. And at one point, Fiona Prine, his wife, was speaking, and somebody hollered out, "Let's do this every year." And I thought, what an emotional toll it must take on the family to put on a whole week event and have people say, "Do it for us again."
Well, actually, that very thought came through my mind as well. I thought, they did 10 or 12 total events during the week, and to every year, or at least occasionally, have a one-time event and have a John Prine thing. I wrote a column months ago expressing my wish to attend a John Prine sing-along where we could all sing the songs together. I did buy and have framed this wonderful poster of John Prine, and I also bought the book John Prine, Aaron Osmond. It's one of the very few books that have been written about John Prine. This is really about his first CD, put out in 1971. You remember that. Tell us how you got in touch and connected to John Prine.
Really, I guess I grew up around music since I was from the Muscle Shoals area, where during the time when the Muscle Shoals sound was so big, and then I came to college in Nashville in the early 70s, not long after Prine became established in that weird little niche of singer-songwriters. At the time, I just fell in love with that kind of music. At that time, rock had turned really pop, and after hearing "Please Mr. Postman" and "Having My Baby" too many times on the radio, I switched my channel to country. And at the time, country hadn't gone pop like it has now. So I was introduced to Prine and to Christopherson and Waylon and Willie and Guy Clark and Jerry Jeff and Emmylou. So it was really a golden age. And I can remember on that radio station, the first hearing an advertisement, I think for a show probably at Exit Inn, one of the clubs downtown. Prine was going to be playing, and they played little clips of Sam Stone, There's a Hole in Daddy's Arm Where All the Money Goes, a clip from Donald and Lydia, and then one from Hello in There. And that just haunted me. So I bought his music, starting out with vinyl, and I've got probably in every format possible. And got to hear him in Charlotte at Neighborhood Theater with Iris DeMent. Got to hear him at Merlefest the last time he played. And I really made a lot of friends just through a mutual love of his music.
And of course, my story is the exact opposite. I had never heard of John Prine until after he died. I'm not a country music fan. I like Chris Christopherson and Willie, but I don't listen to the country music. And it wasn't until June. John Prine died in April of 2020. And then a friend of mine in Birmingham posted on Facebook a video, a tribute video. And what he said about it intrigued me. When my friends post things on Facebook, I take it serious. And so I watched it. And I want you to know that I got converted, baptized, and filled with the Holy Spirit on that one night. Thoroughly converted to John Prine. And I don't know why, I don't know what it was about his music that so gripped my imagination and my soul. But I'm telling you, I got on that John Prine Express and have never looked back, and was thrilled to be a part of this week. What about the week most stands out to you?
I think it was part of it was the variety that every show was a little bit different with a different kind of appeal. And everywhere I go, I ran into people, even when I wasn't at the shows, everybody had on a Prine shirt. If you went out to eat, they had on the Prine shirt, and there was just this connection. You know, you make the eye contact, saying, you know, I'm one of you too. The fact that so many of the people who participated in the concerts and the other things uh, were really they were volunteering their time. This was, I think, all the money that was raised went to the Hello and There Foundation. And so rather than having to beg people to be a part of this, I would imagine they almost had to beat people away. There were so many people who were, you know, really big stars in Nashville who wanted to be a part of this because John had been a part of their life. So it was, you know, the star-studded side of it was amazing. I mean, you couldn't, you'll never stumble upon those kind of shows with that much star power again. But it was really about John. It wasn't about them.
As a newcomer to the music scene in Nashville, very few of the performers on Sunday night and Monday night I had ever heard of. Some of the old ones that sang on Sunday night, but I don't think I'd ever heard of any of the singers on Monday night.
Then you need to do your homework.
I do need to do my homework, but you know, that was one of the things other people have mentioned this. You mentioned it in your article. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That John Prine had mentored so many of these young people. This is what impressed me. So many of the performers were not the people his age and the famous people, but they were the young talents, the up-and-coming people. And I was real impressed by this. He was probably remembering his own start when some more famous people saw his talent and took him to New York to make that first album. But I was very impressed with this. And of course, in the couple of years I've been there, I've watched a lot of John Prine videos and a lot of covers of his songs. And I want to play one right now for you and our audience. I want to play this song by Alice Howe and Freebo. They're from the West Coast, California. They're actually singing in Asheville, North Carolina this weekend. I hope to see them. They're going to do a cover of John's song, It's a Big Old Goofy World. And after we listen for a minute, I'll say just a little bit more about that song.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Up in the morning, work like a dog. It's better than sitting like a bump on a log. Mind all your manners, be quiet as a mouse. One day you'll own a home that's as big as a house. I know a fella, he eats like a horse, knocks his old balls round his old golf course. You ought to see his wife, she's a sweet little dish. She smokes like a chimney and she drinks like a fish. There's a big old goofy man dancing with a big old goofy girl. Ooh, baby, it's a big old goofy world. Now Elvis had a woman with a head like a rock. I wish I had a man that would make my knees knock. He'd sing like an angel and he'd eat like a bird. And if I wrote a song, he'd know every single word. I'd kiss a little baby and give the world a smile. And if you take an inch, give him back a mile. If you lie like a rug don't give a damn, you're never gonna be as happy as a clam. There's a big old goofy man dancing with a big old goofy girl. Ooh, baby, it's a big old goofy world. So I'm sitting in a hotel, trying to write a song. My head is just as empty as the day is long. Why, it's clear as a bell, I should have gone to school. I'd be wise as an owl instead of stubborn as a mule. There's a big old goofy man dancing with a big old goofy girl. Ooh, baby, it's a big old goofy world. There's a big old goofy man dancing with a big old goofy girl. Ooh, baby, it's a big old goofy world.
And that was Alice Howe singing and strumming, and Freebo on the bass horn singing the John Prine song, It's a Big Old Goofy World. They're from California. I hope to see them this weekend when they appear in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm Dwight A. Moody, your host in the Meeting House, where we have conversation on religion and American life. My guest today is Alan Posey of Nashville, Tennessee. Nancy covered the story and wrote about it. You were writing for what magazine?
I was writing for No Depression magazine, which is the magazine of roots music, and the name has nothing to do with depression. It actually comes from an old Carter family song that with the lines, "There's no depression in heaven." But
well, when I saw the magazine and saw the magazine of roots music, I thought, now roots music is really closer to what I think of John Prine's music. You know, he doesn't fit totally under the country umbrella, does he?
That's right. You know, really, in the month before this, back in September, Nashville hosted the Americana Music Festival. And John Prine was, if anything, maybe the mayor of Americana music.
Right.
It's a really big tent that roots music, folk music, some country, bluegrass, and a lot of the people who performed were performing that week, and they fit really comfortably under that particular umbrella.
Yes. You know, early on, growing up in Chicago, part of the folk revival in Chicago, his early music, I don't think, gives the feel of country music. One of the things I noticed about it this week in the Ryman was how they countrified a lot of his songs, but what can you expect in the Ryman, right?
That's right, the Mother Church.
And have you written about him before?
Not anything extensive, maybe little pieces, but this was kind of a challenge because I wanted to cover the week without it just being like a travel log, guess what I saw and you didn't. So I tried to give a flavor of the whole week, how the different shows varied. And probably one thing that was a gem on Monday night that kind of pulled it all together was Sean Kemp. He's really well known, I guess you would say, in the bluegrass circles, if you had to categorize him. But he had a song that he had written, if you remember, December the 30th, 2019, with Prine. And after Prine's death, he held it back. He didn't want to capitalize on it. But it was a song that was written as a love song to Fiona. He said no, realizing, John Prine had, he cheated death a couple of times. He had his bouts with cancer, and she was younger. And so they wrote the tagline of the song is talking about hoping we'll have a lot of time together. And what I remember, there's a point in the song where he said, talked about one day the two of us walking down those streets of gold in heaven, but he said said, I hope it's a long, long
Yes.
time from now. And that made me. That's I think how everybody felt about John Prine. We know he's going to go, but we hope it's a long, long time from now. And that was the theme. I kind of saw it as the birthday party. The funeral nobody wanted to go to. We would much rather have had a birthday party with the guest of honor there.
Yes, I remember very clearly the song and the story behind it, and I wondered immediately whether the lyrics had been published, whether there was going to be a recording of it posted, because I agree with you. It's a powerful love song that I can guarantee you many people are going to be singing to their lovers on 25th anniversaries, 50th anniversaries, because it does have that message. I hope we have a long, long time together. I'll have to say, though, that my favorite non-Prine song, and I don't even know, can't remember who sang it, about what could go wrong when you're writing a song.
Yeah, Lucinda Williams, and she's had a rough time through COVID. Lucinda is really a strong singer-songwriter, but she suffered a stroke during early COVID. But her song, she was talking about sitting down with John, and we opened a bottle of wine. We were going to write a song. What could go wrong? And I think that one too was played for the first time, like the other song, and we were the first audience to hear it. But it was charming.
They were great. I'm eager for both of them to be recorded, or just the recordings of that night to be released. I looked for them online, and the only one I saw was the trio that sang Unwed Fathers.
Oh, yeah.
That is up, but these other two songs, yeah. And of course, I did not know these singers like you did, but that did not detract from me enjoying everything about it. Now, you wrote, they named the week-long celebration You Got Gold. Appropriately. I have the program right here. Of course, I think the song You've Got Gold is just one of the best songs he ever wrote. It also is a love song.
Right. And Keith Sykes, who co-wrote that, appeared at several, I think he sang it at several of the events and told the story. Evidently, they had the idea for the song, wrote it in about an hour, and then went out and were overserved. And he said, we were picked up by a couple of girls. They were policemen, and so I think they spent the night in jail after writing the song.
No kidding. Nobody said that during this whole thing.
I think he told that at maybe one of the other events, but I think imagine being, I think all these co-writers that were part of some of the songs, and then to be a co-writer on the song that becomes the theme for the whole week.
Yeah.
What a great song, idea that we all have a little gold inside of us.
I think it's such a great song. You wrote your article. I wrote a little article about my reflections on it. The only other thing that I said there was I was surprised at how big his fan base is. I'll have to confess that in my circle, my family, they're tired of me talking about John Prine. My church, I quote John Prine, I think more than I quote Jesus in my preaching. I think they're tired of it. And I really, in my extended network across the country, I know very few people who are fans and many who've never heard of John Prine. So when we got there, I was overwhelmed with the size of the crowds and where they were from. A couple sitting right behind us in the Ryman, an very elderly lady and her daughter who had flown here for the whole week, bought tickets to every single thing, had been to many of John's concerts out in California.
Well, I met a young woman in line at the restroom at the first show I went to at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and she said, "Are you from Nashville?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Are you?" And then with an accent, she says, "No, I'm from Ireland." And so I said, have you had your tickets and flight delayed for a year?" She said, "Yes." I said, are you going to any of the other shows? She says, every night. I'll see you in the
See?
bathroom.
Every night.
And I saw her at every show after that. We kept running into each other just laughing. But, that she came from Ireland. I saw people from Washington State, from, all over. Fiona, Prine's wife, interviewed Margot Price at the book festival on Sunday. And they were talking about this. And she said there was someone she met who claimed to have gone to 111 of John Prine's concerts.
Wow. I missed all of them. But one of the things I haven't missed is the song Spanish Pipe Dream. And I want to play it because it has in it a reference to Jesus. I've just published an article on the religious rhetoric in the songs of John Prine, and I'm trying to research. I know he wasn't a church person as an adult. I'm trying to research his upbringing in a mixture of Methodist, Baptist, and Catholic. He married, his first wife was a Catholic. But in many of his songs, he has the images and references to religion. I love the song where he says, he got left behind on Noah's Ark. You remember that song?
Right.
There were two of everything and one of me. He got left behind. But Spanish Pipe Dream, which was sung both on Monday night and Sunday night, is one of his all-time favorites. People love it. I want to play a little bit of it here. The famous advice from the topless dancer.
Who had something up her sleeve.
It's such a great line as a writer, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
That topless dancer had something up her sleeve. It's such a great line. Blow up your TV, throw away your newspaper, move to the country, build you a home, plant a little garden, eat a lot of peaches. Try to find Jesus on your own. I want to listen to it a little bit. Let's watch and listen.
She was a level-headed dancer on the road to alcohol, and I was just a soldier on my way to Montreal, where she pressed her chest against me about the time the jukebox broke. Yeah, she gave me a peck on the back of the neck, and these are the words she spoke. Blow up your teeth, blow away your pipe, go to the country, build you a home, plant a little garden, eat a lot of pizza, try and find Jesus on your own. Well, I sat there at the table and I acted real naive. First knew that topless lady had something up her sleeve. Well, she danced around the barroom and she did the hoochie coo. Yeah, she sang her song all night long, telling me what to do. Blow up your teeth, throw away your pipe, go to the country, build you a home, plant a little garden, eat a lot of pizza, try and find Jesus on your own. Go! Well, I was young and hungry and about to leave that place. And when just as I was leaving, well, she looked me in the face. I said, you must know the answer. She said, I know, but I'll give it a try. And to this very day, we've been living our way. Here is the reason why. We blew up our teeth, blew well paid, went to the country, built us a home, had a lot of children, but cinnamon peaches. Y'all found Jesus on now.
The great John Prine singing his wonderful song, Spanish Pipe Dream. You're in the Meeting House where we have conversation on religion and American life. I'm your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody. My guest is the almost Dr. Nancy Posey of Nashville, Tennessee. You're about to be doctored. You're working on your own.
Yes, I have a dissertation, sent it to committee, so
Good luck to you.
a year to go.
I've been down that road. I have written about the religious rhetoric in the songs of John Prine. You can read this and 11 other pieces that I've written about John Prine on my website at TheMeetingHouse.net. 2 of those articles feature a song called Everybody. It starts out with these words: while out sailing on the ocean, while out sailing on the sea, I bumped into the Savior, and he said, "Pardon me." I said, "Jesus, you look tired." He said, "Jesus, so do you. Won't you sit down, son, 'cause I've got some facts to chew." Now, you told me you were not familiar with this song.
It was one I know. It's not one probably that I know as well, but
I could not find an example of him singing it. It's on one of his early songs, but of course I liked it. I was drawn to it because of its religious imagery. Out there, bumped into the Savior, and then he and Jesus sit down and start to talk. And the chorus is, everybody needs somebody that they can talk to. In this case, it's Jesus needing somebody to talk to. Let's take a listen to this, at least the first minute of this song.
While out sailing on the ocean, while out sailing on the sea, bumped into the Savior. He said, "Pardon me." I said, "Jesus, you look tired." He said, "Jesus, so do you. Won't you sit down, son, 'cause I got some fat to chew." See, everybody needs somebody that they can talk to. Someone to open up their ears and let that trouble through. Now you don't have to sympathize or call what they may do, but everybody needs somebody that can talk to.
The song illustrates many things about John Prine: his familiarity with religious ideas and imagery, his songwriting creativity, mixed with a lot of humor, and his very ordinary singing voice, punctuated by that West Kentucky accent.
Right.
Carr, in this song, you could sit down and talk and listen to somebody, and you don't have to carr. That's a West Kentucky pronunciation of the word care.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you earlier, there's something about that reminded me of Christopherson's song many years ago, "Jesus Was a Capricorn," which really emphasized how misunderstood and rejected Jesus was by ordinary people, when he just wanted to talk to them.
And here we have Jesus wanting to talk to John. It was Jesus who needed somebody to talk to. I find this an inversion of normal religion.
Right.
You know, normally we tell our people, you go talk to Jesus and tell him your problems.
Have a little talk with Jesus.
That's
and tell
right.
him all about your troubles.
I grew up singing that song, and you did too, evidently. But
Absolutely.
here we've got a song where Jesus needs somebody to talk to, emphasizing his humanity
Exactly.
and the realism of it. It's a wonderful song, and I've spoken about it many, many times. Have you ever been to any of the John Prine sites outside of Nashville? Have you been to Paradise?
I haven't. Now, I do know that they did send his ashes floating down the river there.
Right.
That was part of, but I haven't been on that pilgrimage. I guess most of the John Prine sites I've been to are all up Nashville, Kroger's and the theater, and that's, I guess, one of the things about Prine that I guess the reason he's so loved, and especially here, is he was one of the local guys. He didn't have to have his retinue of security guards around him all the time. He went to, he bought his own groceries. He went to other people's concerts, sat in the balcony. Evidently, he ate at the cafeteria at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and when he wanted to see the exhibits, he paid for the ticket.
He stood in line, you say in your article. He stood in line to buy his own tickets. He didn't call up for any special treatment, did he?
Okay. In fact, yeah, they said one day one of the girls selling tickets said, she said, I've had such a bad day, I may go blow up my TV and throw away my papers. And she looked up, and there stood John Prine.
And there should.
Like he'd been conjured.
Well, you get that sense of an ordinary person all from the beginning to the end of his music.
Right.
From the time he grew up in a working class neighborhood in Chicago, his father was a union boss, and of course that working class imagery of reference to working overtime and front porches and screen doors all the way through his poetry. Well, I made my first trip to Paradise last summer, a year ago summer.
Right.
Of course, it's just a big a power plant now, and but they're turning in that song, "Take Me Back to Muhlenberg County." He mentions the Rochester Dam.
Right.
And they announced just a couple of weeks ago that the local people are renaming the public park at the Rochester Dam in honor of John Prine. I'm going to be one of the first people to visit it.
As well they should.
Nancy, thank you so much for coming in the meeting house today and talking to me about John Prine.
It's a pleasure.
We'll have to do this again. I'm going to look for your byline and read some more of your stuff. Good luck on your dissertation.
All
and
right,
the next time you're over here in North Carolina, drop me a line and we'll get together and have some coffee and talk some more John Prine.
You come back to Nashville and I'll show you which shows to hit.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to take you up on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll be back in just a minute to wrap up the show, but I want to now take a short break and introduce you to the Swamp Rabbit Trail. We've been talking about North Carolina, but I'm actually living right now just outside of Greenville, South Carolina. Running very close to my home is the Swamp Rabbit Trail. I want to show it to you. I want to introduce you to it. Let's take a look. Thank you for joining us in the Meeting House today. We've been talking about John Prine and listening to his music, joining in the tributes to his long and influential life. Next week, we'll be talking about women, but my guest is a man, Dr. Joseph Early. He's written a book, Because of Eve. The subtitle is Historical and Theological Survey of the Subjugation of Women in the Christian Tradition. It's just come out a couple of weeks, I have started reading it. I'm going to read and review it. You can read my review in my newsletter, which comes out every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. If you would like to subscribe to the newsletter, go to the website at TheMeetingHouse.net and subscribe. We're coming to you over our YouTube channel, and I would be appreciative if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us in trying to keep the Meeting House conversations on religion and American life before the American public and in front of you. Thanks to my guest, Nancy Posey. She teaches at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. She listens and writes about John Prine, and she's going to come and see me down in North Carolina sometime. We're going to continue our conversation. Thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for watching. Until next week, I'm Dwight A. Moody in the Meeting House.